You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokets and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Monday, September 11th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. And I am back from jolly old England. Sorry for taking that extended break. We've been off for the past couple of weeks while I travel across the pond. I spoke at the Product Earth UK Expo in Birmingham in the Midlands. And that's up online now at the Product Earth UK Facebook page. I think I've also posted a link to it up on my Facebook page. And later tonight, I'll get one posted at the mjagenda.com page, so you can check out what I had to say on the results of legalization in the United States of America. And speaking of those results, that's going to be the subject of our Radical Rant today. We're going to talk a little bit about the latest iteration of the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, proving once again that Kevin Sabet was wrong. Wrong. We'll tell you all about that when we dig deep into the numbers. Also on the program today, you're going to hear the Americans for Safe Access patient-focused update. We've got some great updates for our medical marijuana patients out there. Dr. Jahan Marcu will be telling you about coming events for the organization. We've also got David Mangone on the program to fill you in on what's happening in the state of Maryland. And Debbie Churgai will be on the program to give us an update on what's happening for our military veterans and their access to medical cannabis. It was just an amazing time out in London and the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. I want to give them a big thanks. And of course, my protege, Greg DeHoot, who helped get me out there to London. In addition to Birmingham, I got to enjoy London itself, walked around quite a bit and saw all the sights, and got a chance to take a road trip out to Brighton. So we had a little time by the ocean. Good place to get some fish and chips, let me tell you that. If you want to check out my photos, I'll have them available on my new Flickr account. You can find it at flickr.com/photos/Radical Russ. That'll be my public photo page from here on out. All that, plus we've got the cannabis headline news coming up next with some updates on the Rohrabacher Amendment and interesting story from the state of Iowa. Let's go to the news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Monday, September 11th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. A budget deal approved in Congress on Friday extended federal protections for state legal medical marijuana patients and providers until December 8th, potentially creating another opportunity to ensure they are included in the fiscal year 2018 budget. Earlier this week, the House Rules Committee blocked an amendment introduced by Representatives Dana Rohrabacher and Earl Blumenauer from being heard by the House during the rest of the budget negotiations. This made it very likely that the amendment, which prevents the Department of Justice from targeting state medical marijuana programs, would not be included in the final budget for next year. Without inclusion, these protections would have expired September 30th. The Senate version of the legislation includes the marijuana protections, but the House version does not. The matter will be resolved by a conference committee that merges the two chambers' proposals. An unusual attempt by Iowa to work with another state to transport medical marijuana oil across state lines is on hold amid legal concerns that it could invite scrutiny from the federal government. The Iowa Attorney General's office advised the Iowa Department of Public Health this month that it should not implement a small section in Iowa's new medical marijuana law that requires the state, before the end of the year, to license up to 2 out-of-state dispensaries from a bordering state. Those entities would have been expected to bring cannabis oil into Iowa in order to sell it. That's considered illegal under federal law, which categorizes marijuana as a type of controlled substance that is prohibited from being moved across state lines. Jeff Greenwood, a spokesman for the Attorney General's office, said in an email that if a state program authorizes or encourages diversion from one state to another, quote, it is possible that state's program may come under increased scrutiny from the federal government, end quote. He said the halt on implementation should remain, quote, until the federal government provides further guidance regarding state medical marijuana programs, end quote. A new study from a pair of University of New Mexico researchers has found that over 1/3 of chronic pain patients surveyed were able to quit all prescription pain medication once they had access to medical marijuana. The study, to be published in an upcoming issue of the Journal of the American Medical Directors Association, looked at 83 chronic pain patients who enrolled in the New Mexico Medical Cannabis Program compared to 42 non-enrolled control patients. The researchers found that 28 cannabis program enrollees, or 34%, ceased the use of all scheduled prescription medications by the last 6 months of the observation period, compared to just one control group patient, or 2%. The researchers hypothesized that legal access to cannabis may reduce the use of multiple classes of dangerous prescription medications in certain patient populations. In response to the federal government's plan to legalize cannabis by July 2018, Ontario is the first province or territory in Canada to publicly announce a comprehensive plan to regulate federally legalized cannabis. The proposed minimum age to use, purchase, and possess recreational cannabis in Ontario will be 19. Approximately 150 standalone stores will be opened by 2020, including 80 by July 1st, 2019, servicing all regions of the province. Online distribution will be available across the province from July 2018 onward. Decisions with respect to pricing and taxation will be made after further details are provided by the federal government. Final decisions will be informed by focusing on the objectives of discouraging consumption and eliminating the illegal market. Looking to a future of automation and legal weed, the California Bureau of Cannabis Control is forbidding the delivery of marijuana by an autonomous vehicle, whether from the sky or on the ground. According to the regulations, quote, deliveries may be made only in person by enclosed motor vehicle. Cannabis goods may not be visible to the public during deliveries. Cannabis goods may not be left in an unattended motor vehicle unless the vehicle has an active alarm system. Vehicles used for delivery must have a dedicated active GPS device that enables the dispensary to identify the geographic location of the vehicle during delivery, end quote. Generally, FAA rules require that aerial drones fly within a pilot's sight, and even if those rules were changed, which Amazon and other retailers are pressing for, local governments and states may still regulate how marijuana is distributed. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Monday, September 11th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm astonished to hear people suggest we can solve our heroin crisis. Have you heard this? By having more marijuana.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net. Welcome to ACE's Patient-Focused Update. Almost every U.S. state now recognizes some form of cannabis as medicine. But since 1971, the federal government has steadfastly denied the medical benefits of herbal cannabis. Americans for Safe Access is the nation's leading organization fighting for the rights of all patients who use cannabis as medicine. Join us now for another edition of ACE's Patient-Focused Update. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Patient-Focused Update from Americans for Safe Access. Visit the website at safeaccessnow.org. I'm Russ Belville, and joining us from Americans for Safe Access, we have Dr. Jahan Marcu, who's the Chief Science Officer for the organization, David Mangone, the Policy Advisor for the organization, and Debbie Churgai, who is the Executive Assistant to the Director of the organization. Welcome, all three of you, to the program today.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Let's start with Dr. Marcu. There are all sorts of things happening. We're getting into fall now where the conference schedule and events are beginning to take place. Can you give us an update on some of Americans for Safe Access and the events they'll be participating in this fall?
Great. So coming up next week, we'll be at the Cannabis Science Conference in Portland. We'll have a booth there. We're also giving a presentation on the endocannabinoid system. So if you're going to be in Portland next week, come by, say hello. We also have two things that you can sign up for if you're in the cannabis industry. If you go to safeaccessnow.org/events, we're actually doing inspection preparedness assessments. So similar to a law enforcement training, but how to be prepared for your cannabis inspection. We've been working with a lot of regulators to develop their checklists and train their assessors and inspectors, and we're gearing up to offer this to cannabis industry folks, so they can sign up now. We're also doing a in-person and online live training that will be in Philadelphia at the law offices of Offutt Kerman, and folks can go to safeaccessnow.org and sign up for that training. Whether or not you live in Philadelphia, it doesn't matter. You can watch it remotely. And those are the three main events coming up. At the end of September, we'll be at the International Association for Cannabinoids as Medicine meeting. I'm on the board of directors of the organization, which is a clinical cannabis-focused conference. So it's really one of the only places you can go to and actually get real research, real clinical updates about what people are doing around the world.
Fantastic. And we can get more information on these from the ASA website, I assume?
Yes, and I think there's one unique thing that we're doing for the first time in Philly that I think people will be really interested in is a Cannabis Extraction 101 training. And this is actually going to be focused not on how to make the best product, but how to do that safely. And so what are the ins and outs? What do people need to know when making a decision about what method of extraction to choose from? What are the pluses and minuses? What cannabinoids and terpenes are preferentially extracted in those methods? But most of all, how to make safe products and how to keep the people who are making them safe. And I think that's going to be one of our unique offerings in Philadelphia. So if people want to watch that online, it's going to be sort of a free add-on for that course.
That's fantastic news. All right, let's get to some updates on licensing. When we last spoke, we were looking at the state of Maryland and how they were moving forward with their medical cannabis program. And I was hoping perhaps, Debbie, you've got some news for us on Maryland?
Yes. Last week, the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission announced the approval of 8 more companies. There was only one previously approved before this, so 8 more companies to grow, and some of them also to process medical cannabis in Maryland. And 3 of those companies were also PFC, that's our Patient-Focused Certification Program, certified. Dr. Jahan Marcu is also our PFC director. And Harvest of Maryland, Free State Wellness, and Greenleaf Medical are the 3 cultivators that got licensed that are part of our PFC program. We also expanded some of our services this year to help these businesses make it through the licensing process. So we started doing these inspection preparedness assessments, and those organizations went through our inspection preparedness assessment. And part of that includes we did a mock inspection, we checked their SOPs, we reviewed state inspection checklists with them. We went over things inspectors may be looking for, including the most common violations that often result in fines. We gave them a suggested corrective action report and a post-audit debrief. So we were excited to have this Maryland, the program finally getting up and running. A year ago, 15 licenses were approved for the stage 1, and now we have 9 cultivators that were approved for stage 2, which means they're now ready to have product in and can actually start growing. So it's very exciting for the patients of Maryland who have been waiting almost 4 years for this medicine.
That's excellent news. Now, I know in covering the state of Maryland, there had been some concerns over the licensing with respect to African Americans trying to get into the industry. Do these new licenses address that issue any?
So I think one of the things that isn't covered by the media is that there actually are a lot of minorities working at these facilities. I personally have done inspections have been a part of inspections for at least half a dozen of the operations. I have to tell you that the staff that are actually on the ground, there doesn't appear to be a diversity issue when you actually go to these places and see who's working there. But, you know, a lot of them are owned by rich white guys. So that's something that'll have to maybe get worked out on a different, that might be beyond the scope of what PFC can do.
Right.
But definitely, I have to say that they are hiring locally. And it's really good to see. I think if you really want to see what the future of the cannabis industry looks like, you got to come to the East Coast. There's a lot of diversity at these places where people are working at, and I've met a lot of them.
Fantastic. All right, let's get to some other fantastic news for our nation's veterans who have long been trying to access medical cannabis for post-traumatic stress, for war injuries, both physical and mental. David, can you give us an update on what's happening at the federal level for our veterans?
Sure. Actually, this morning at the American Legion's conference, they adopted a resolution that called for Veterans Administration doctors to be allowed to discuss cannabis with their veteran patients. There's still currently a policy directive in place from 2016 that basically restricts VA doctors from even discussing, let alone recommending cannabis with their patients. So this move by the American Legion definitely signifies a friendly amount of support from one of the nation's largest veteran groups in terms of giving veterans access to the cannabis that they need for a variety of medical conditions. So I will say this isn't the first time the American Legion has acted on this. Last year at the same conference, they published a resolution calling to reschedule cannabis to at least recognize the medical value. So based on the large amount of veterans that are involved in the American Legion, it's over 2 million, and President Trump's support of the organization. In fact, just yesterday, he retweeted some of the information that the American Legion had put out. This certainly is a great step in getting veterans the cannabis they need. And I think this will be echoed when we get back with Congress with the Senate Veterans Equal Access Amendment. What this resolution does is it really shows that there's a lot of support and powerful support from a significant veterans organization behind an amendment like Vets Equal Access. So it's really good news to come out from the American Legion today.
Yeah, that's great news. Let's hope it translates into political action from the administration. And also, we're keeping an eye on what has been called the Rohrabacher Amendment to protect the medical cannabis states. We know that has to be re-upped every year. Can you give us an update on that?
Sure. The amendment itself, there's more and more support congressional-wise. It's one of the most bipartisan amendments. It has one of the most amounts of co-sponsors of any amendments to be proposed. So right now the big challenge is getting it past the Rules Committee, which is led by Representative Pete Sessions. But I think once you get over that hurdle, the support is there in Congress to maintain these protections that have been in place since 2014. Something somewhat related to the Rohrabacher Amendment is Representative Rohrabacher, along with Representative Gates, Representative Polis, and Representative Blumenauer, yesterday sent a letter to the Department of Justice basically asking why the DOJ has prevented applications for research for medical cannabis from moving forward. Not that they've denied or approved any, but there's been about 25 applications since August of 2016 for various research purposes that haven't received any action. So a Washington Post article last week had sort of hinted that DOJ was refusing to act, And these representatives had sent a letter basically asking if that was true, and if it was true, the reason for their inaction. So it should be interesting to see if the Department of Justice responds to this letter before the appropriations process starts. Because I know in addition to patients being protected under the Roebuck-Farr Amendment, there's lots of researchers who are interested in how the appropriations process is going to shake out as well.
All right. Well, we will hope for the best on all these fronts. We want to thank David Mangone, Debbie Churgai, and Jahan Marcu for joining us today. Is there anything else we should leave our listeners with, Jahan, before we go?
Absolutely. I would like to just brag for a moment. Americans for Safe Access and Ethan Russo have just released a book chapter in a new textbook called Cannabis Pharmacology, and it's online right now. You can find it at the usual internet search suspects like PubMed, but it's called Cannabis Pharmacology, the Usual Suspects, and a Few Promising Leads, and the lead authors are Ethan Russo and myself. And what this covers is some of the stuff we know already about the major cannabinoids, but it goes into a lot of the lesser-known terpenes, such as ocimene, guaiol, and a couple other terpene tongue twisters that are a little difficult to pronounce. But we also, the interesting thing about ocimene that Ethan Russo and I uncovered is that law enforcement is, for example, using it to train honeybees to detect drugs in packages. And we also go over a lot of cannabis odds and ends, discussing the nutritional compounds found in roots, some of those alkaloids, what's in the leaves, as well as not only what's coating the seeds of cannabis that's good, as well as those little sprouts that appear when you see seedlings appear. Those have their own unique compounds and profiles. And so we definitely covered the usual suspects, but we gave more attention to some things that are lesser reported on in the cannabis plant. And that just came out, I believe. It's been released now. The book officially goes to print the first week of September.
Wow, I look forward to perusing that publication. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Patient Focus Update from Americans for Safe Access. Make sure to check out the website at safeaccessnow.org. And have yourselves a great day. Thanks for being here.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhale. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant.
How wrong does somebody need to be time and time again before they're no longer considered an expert on a subject by the media? Now, there are numerous examples of TV talking heads who keep being elevated to pundit status despite being obviously, repeatedly, and terribly wrong about economic, political, and social trends. Think about those screaming finance guys who completely missed the housing bubble and the resulting Great Recession. Or the military experts who swore there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and we'd be in and out in a 6-month war that would pay for itself. Or the babbling biblical literalists who prophesied an apocalypse if we allowed the gay people to marry. And, oh, wait, hold on. Trump's president. I better hedge my bet on that apocalypse stuff. Well, anyway, none of these people are so colossally wrong with no consequence to their incessant media bookings as the marijuana prohibitionists. Despite being proven obviously, repeatedly, and terribly wrong by 5 years of marijuana legalization and by 20 years of medical cannabis access, they keep showing up on my TV, spouting some new fabricated fake outrage about legalization, and they're never held to account by the media for their past failed predictions. What kind of message would marijuana legalization send to the children? Those prohibitionists asked us. And for decades, we'd hear from drug czars and addiction counselors and child experts on the TV who told us, so legalization is going to make it seem like society approves of marijuana. Oh, more kids will want to use marijuana. Oh, it's going to be easier for kids to get marijuana once it's legalized. Oh, there's going to be more marijuana use by kids. They're going to use it at younger and younger ages. In every single case, they were wrong. The latest 2016 National Survey on Drug Use and Health has just come out. And it shows that for people aged 12 to 17, the children, the lifetime use, the past year use, and the past month use of marijuana is down. Just 14.8% of teens have tried marijuana, about 1 out of 7. 12% used it last year, about 1 out of 8. And 6.5% used it last month, about 1 out of 16. Now, this national survey, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, or as we call it, the NSDUH, the national survey has been conducted in its current form since 2002. Now, back in 2002, remember, way before we legalized marijuana, way back when there were only like 8 medical marijuana states, way back then in 2002, 20.6% of teens had tried marijuana. We're down to 14.8. 15.8% of teens tried last year. We're down to 12. And 8.2% of teens tried it last month, and that's down to 6.5 now. In fact, these current figures, the 2016 figures for the marijuana use by teens, are the lowest figures we've recorded in this century. Now, why are fewer kids using marijuana these days? Simple. Because it's lame. Now look, I don't mean that marijuana is lame because it doesn't get you high, or that marijuana is lame because it doesn't have medical benefits. Hell, no. No, it's just lame to the kids these days because now it's cool to their parents. Smoking a joint these days is as hip and rebellious to teenagers as mom's glass of Chardonnay and dad's Motley Crue playlist. Also, the 2016 NSDUH is showing us that teens are using marijuana less, even though they fear it less. They ask them about their perception of risk. How risky do they think marijuana use is, right? And in 2002, asking if marijuana use was a great risk, almost a third of teens said that using it monthly was risky. And over half of teens thought that using marijuana weekly was risky. That's back in 2002. 32.4% said monthly use is risky. 51.5% said weekly use is risky. Those figures today, 2016, monthly risk is down to 27% from 32. Weekly risk is down to 40% from 51. So fewer kids think it's risky, and yet fewer kids are using marijuana. How'd that work? Well, it really shouldn't be that surprising, considering that going back to 2002, we were telling teenagers that their marijuana use helped terrorists kill innocent families and might make them shoot their friends. For today's high school senior, there have always been multiple marijuana states, medical marijuana states, and legalized states since they were freshmen. Another thing the 2016 NSDUH is showing is that legalization is making access for teenagers more difficult. When they asked him in 2002, hey, would it be easy or fairly easy to score some pot? 55% of teenagers said yes. In 2016, that figure's down to 44.7%. I've never understood why prohibitionists thought that selling marijuana in adult-only stores that check identification would somehow make it easier for teens to get marijuana. Look, kids who are smoking pot now already have their hookup. But the more legal opportunities that exist to sell marijuana, the fewer dealers are going to take that unnecessary risk of selling to minors. And finally, when the teenagers do take up their marijuana use, the ones that do, the 6.5% that use monthly, when they do take it up, they're taking it up at older and older ages. In 2002, the median age at which someone first tried marijuana was about age 17, and had been 17 or 18 since the 1980s. From 2015 to 2016, the median age went up from 19 to 19.3. What more evidence do the prohibitionists need to prove that if you care about the children, you need to legalize marijuana?
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
Well, folks, that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Time flies when you legalize. We'll be back tomorrow. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
You take a seat, you're ready to